Good afternoon, everyone. Bye week's coming at a good time for us. We're in essence about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through when you think of all the practices we had in fall camp with 4 weeks prior to playing Stanford and then playing 5 games. It comes really probably at a good time. I'd rather have it come after a win, so you don't have a bad taste in your mouth for a couple weeks, but it's not. So we have this week we're going to spend some time on Iowa State and then quite a bit of time on ourselves with our younger players as well as with our older guys, just kind of shoring up some things, doing some self-scout, doing some technique work. But these kids also need some rest. They need to get their bodies right because once we come back, then we've got a bunch of games in a row with not an open week. So we've got to get their minds fresh. We've got to get their bodies fresh, but we still have some work to do, and we'll spend an awful lot of time with our younger players this week. So it comes at a good time for us.
Speaking of those younger guys, who are some names, some players you are looking forward to getting a deeper look at this week?
There's a bunch of guys for sure. In the offensive line, Andrew Linegang is somebody that I'm really excited about because I think he will be a really, really good player here in short time. And he's down with the varsity right now as a true freshman offensive lineman. You don't see that very often. So I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do. We're looking obviously at Jake Rubley quite a bit this week, give him some snaps, and Max Marsh from the quarterback standpoint. Those guys stick out to me on offense. DJ Giddens on offense, running back, that we think is going to be a really talented guy that just needs repetition. And and then defensively, Damon Alalio is a good player as a defensive tackle that needs to go against guys like Linegang and Hecht and Gillum this week. And Bo Palmer and Keenan Gaskin are going to be good inside linebackers. They need reps. And Crew Jackson's a long, athletic outside linebacker that we're excited about. Desmond Purnell, Marvin Martin are good young safety guys that we're excited about. So it's a bunch of guys, and I'm sure I'm missing out on some too. Chris Tennant is going to get a lot of reps this week with kicking and punting, so I'm excited for Chris because I think he's a really talented guy. So kind of the list goes on, but for us today we'll work some Iowa State, and then those guys will go against each other for a period of practice too.
Now that you've had a chance to get a deeper look at the way you played in the last game and the Oklahoma State game, what are just some things you do want to shore up on defense before you play Iowa State?
Biggest thing is getting back to some basics. Tackling and getting off blocks are the two biggest things, and letting the guys play faster. And some of that is us as coaches probably trying to do too much. And we've talked about that as a defensive staff of letting them play a little bit more like they did against Stanford, and then their bodies were fresher against Stanford and Southern and Nevada. But maybe not trying to be as perfect as just let them go out and play and execute our base rules and principles. But bottom line, we have to play faster, and sometimes you can kind of paralyze their mind by having too much thoughts going in there. But we also have to get off blocks and tackle better.
Coach, three-man front was really good for the non-conference. Are people catching up to it, or is it just the things you just listed?
I think it's a lot of the things that I listed. A lot more teams in our league are doing it, and so the one thing that is unique is we haven't given up the explosive plays, which we did last year. Obviously, last year was a unique year, but we aren't giving up the explosive play, and that's the encouraging thing. And I think the longest run we've given up is 28 yards, which is way, way too much, and that still comes down to tackling. That still comes down to getting off a block. We've given up less explosive plays, but probably too much in that 9 to 14 range where it's probably just, why didn't we make that tackle? Why didn't we keep that cup? Why didn't we converge on the ball carrier or converge on the receiver quicker? And, we went back and looked as a staff. We weren't playing as fast for sure on Saturday. Really good Oklahoma team, let's not be mistaken there, as we were against Stanford and flying through there. Different offenses, obviously, both talented teams. But so we've got to go back to getting our bodies right and then playing faster with better technique.
I didn't notice if you used a four-man front at all on Saturday. Why was that? And now with the defensive end issue, does that bring into that?
It does, and it did. The other thing was the tempo with which OU was just getting lined up, maybe not snapping the ball, but not subbing as much as some teams do, and just getting lined up really quickly. And, we'll work both fronts again this week with our younger players because we have some guys that are tailored more to the 4 down. But you're right, with us down Bronson and down Khalid, it becomes a factor. And I don't know how long Bronson's going to be out. It's not long term, but I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. But some other guys, Felix, going to have to play more snaps. Nate's going to have to play a lot more snaps. Spencer's going to have to play. Trusso's going to have to play more snaps. It's going to tax us a little bit.
And finally, after going back and watching the film, Skyler's injury took the run game away from him. Did it force him to kind of trust his receivers were going to find a way to get open?
Well, we talked late in the week when we thought he had a chance to play that he needed to be, really smart with what he does outside the pocket and make sure he knew where his checkdowns were, make sure he knew where his safety valve receivers were, because I didn't want him running around and ad-libbing. But I didn't say that to him either because you want the young man to say, "Hey, I'm cleared to play. Let me go play." I think it made him a better player, to be honest with you, on Saturday. And you go back and look at that game, that kid played really, really well. And Skyler's a tremendous football player, and we missed him for a couple of weeks. Will and Jaron did a nice job, but there's a 6-year guy that's done this for an awful long time that knows the receivers and knows the offense. And I'm excited, even though we suffered a disappointing loss, I'm excited about where we can go with him only probably getting better. But he stayed in the pocket and did a great job continuing to look downfield.
You've had a chance now to kind of digest Saturday. Do you think that the aggression on offense is something we're going to see more of?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean truly by aggression, other than the fact that we knew we had to score points against these guys. Every game's different. We knew Oklahoma was going to put up points. I didn't know what Nevada was going to do. I didn't know what Stanford was going to do. But the game, as those things played out, we were going to do a good enough job on defense that you could be probably more conservative on offense. But in our league, you have to be more aggressive because there's a lot of talented offenses out there. And when you have an experienced quarterback, you want to not hold them back or hold him back. And we talked about that with the receivers and the offensive line, that if we had some of those situations where we could stay on the field, I trusted those guys. And I trusted the 6-year quarterback that, 4th and 4, we ought to be able to convert. 4th and 8, a little bit tougher, but I've been in the situation a few times, and I haven't second guessed myself, but I also know you need touchdowns to win. I go back to 2 situations. Last year against West Virginia, we took a field goal to go up 3-0. 4th and 2, same situation. Do I second guess myself? Should have gone for touchdown. Well, we've got our points. Whatever, a few weeks later, we have to answer a drive of Iowa State that they go down and score. We take it all the way down, have 1st and goal at the 3. It's 4th and goal at the 2. And I didn't second guess myself. Mess is like, we've got to play, let's go. Don't get it. Boy, you should have taken points, or why would you do that? I was not going to do that this year. If we were going to be in that situation with a veteran offense, we're going to go try to get touchdowns. Now, if it's 4th and 8, maybe it's a different story. But 4th and 2, I hope we have enough plays that we can, dial something up and execute.
And can you evaluate Cooper Beebe's game for us now that you've gotten a chance to watch film?
Cooper played really well, and he's playing at a really high level. He's playing at an all-conference level, and I think there's more in Cooper. I think he can be even better than he's played, but he's playing at a really high level.
Could you discuss up-tempo when you got the ball with the 10-minute mark?
At the 10-minute mark, I'm trying to think. We always are aware of that, and I know that we gave Skyler a couple of different options, but some of it was a little bit based on were we inbounds, were we out of bounds, was the play clock rolling or not. I wanted to make sure that he felt comfortable in everything that we did too, and not get too far ahead of ourselves, not just for that game, but for the next 6 or 7 or 8 games. And so it's always talked about with Skyler, but I thought Skyler had complete control of what we were doing out there.
Your opening drives of the third quarter, the last 3 games, have averaged 1 yard, no first downs, no points.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a self-scouting situation, or earlier adjustments to your opponents? How do you address
Well,
that?
we should have had an 80-yard touchdown on the third play of the second of the third quarter, and we had a miscommunication between 2 great football players in Skyler Thompson and Deuce Vaughn. We have an 80-yard touchdown or whatever it was, 78-yard touchdown, and those 2 had a misconnect, or it's a touchdown. There was nobody in the middle of the field. That's a miscommunication between the 2 guys. It's not something that you look at and say, boy, what are we doing wrong to start the second half? Wow. I mean, we had things dialed up. We just miscommunicated for those 2 guys, and those are our best 2 guys. So that just going to happen. It happens all across all levels of football. We have been better in certain times on defense. Weren't as good this time, but I was afraid sooner or later they were going to figure us out because we played them pretty well in the first half, Oklahoma. But something that we for sure got to be better at when we come out the second half.
And just your current defensive end situation, what's Cody Steffelbein's progress been like?
He's getting better. Not probably quite ready, just simply because he moved over from tight end so late in the process. But he's going to get a bunch of reps this week, and he's getting closer. And I hope there's enough improvement this week that he might be able to get into the mix, whether it's against Iowa State or hopefully soon after.
I know some of it was having Skyler back, but do you feel like the receivers took a step forward in the last game against Oklahoma?
Well, when Skyler's throwing it around and feeling really confident like he was, everybody's a viable option. And when your opportunity comes, he's going to put it on you. You got to make a play. And he put it on guys, and we made plays. And he knew where his safety valve was. I mean, he knew what we were doing with Landry. He knew what we were doing with Deuce Vaughn if they took away a vertical that we were trying to get to Malik or Phillip or somebody else that, okay, it's not there right now. Rather than holding it and taking a sack, it's not there right now. I'm going to get the thing out of my hand. And everybody knew they were a viable option, and I think that's going to help us moving forward.
Daniel Matter-Bebe, was that a case where he took his couple of snaps and realized he couldn't go?
Yeah, we had a small package for him because he thought he could go some. He didn't practice all week, and so he practiced very, very limited on Thursday, and thought there was a few things that he can do. Made a big catch, but just the way the game was going, I don't think he was going to be the best option for us, and we need to get him healthy.
One more question on the defense. When you go with the 3-3-5 this year, is it difficult against Big 12 teams, because that is something they do see quite a bit in this league?
You bet. And a lot of people have specific answers to things. And, we also go back and look at what we've done in the past. We weren't very successful against Iowa State running 4 down last year. A lot of things went into that. Taking 2 linebackers on the trip probably was the biggest thing that went into that. But the year before against 4 down, we were pretty successful. Well, it wasn't the greatest weather day here. So Iowa State's the prime example, simply because they do a lot of what we're trying to do on defense. There's a few differences, but more similarities than differences. But that is no question in the back of our mind of, okay, they see this every day in practice. But there's a lot of teams that are doing this, that are having success if you do what you do. It still comes down to execution. It still comes down to, that's my gap, or that's my man, or I have to get off a block and I have to make tackles in space. And that's something we have to continue to improve on.
2 more quick ones for you. Malik Knowles, how much confidence do you think he's playing with as a return man right now after the success he's had?
Ton of confidence, and tons of credit to the guys that are blocking on that, because we made some great blocks. We've got a lot of veteran guys in the back of that with Lenners and Allen and Fletcher creating some seams. And then Eric Hommel's done some really good things on there. Landry always is. Ross, Cade, there's a bunch of guys they're a big factor in that. Phillip, as far as being an off returner and knowing, because there's a sequence to what he does as well. We spend a lot of time on it and always have since I've been here. And I know previous to that, they spent a lot of time on the return game. You just don't see very many opportunities as much anymore in the kick return game. So many kickers are so good to kick it out of the end zone. But, we were fortunate enough that kicked it from the 20, and we worked that situation a lot of kicking it from the 20 because there's more distance for you because kickers try to kick it deep. There's more distance, which sometimes helps you, and it did.
Landry, obviously, he's having a really good year. I'm just curious, at what point when you saw him back at full health during preseason camp did you think he's going to be playing this way?
Well, I always hoped he would because I know what a competitor he is, and I know when he had the surgery, it was, touch and go if he was going to be ready for Stanford, and that was our goal. And I told him, I said, we're going to kind of manage your body through fall camp to make sure that you can play in the Stanford game. And I just want him to play and have the experience. But probably middle of August, and I saw him with the spring in his legs and saw him being able to cut and drive and accelerate. And I told him, I said, Landry, you look like the same kid I saw in 2019. And maybe that clicked to him as well. Like, you know what, I do feel that good. I'm glad somebody notices it because he was hurting all last year. He was just a shell of himself. He would tell you that. And so I knew that he had potential to have the type of game that he had on Saturday from a production standpoint. All the stats you can throw out the window, whether that kid catches 1 ball, 6 balls, or 0, the plays that he makes in the run game blocking are instrumental. He blocked so well against Nevada, and we rushed the ball for whatever it was. And all the offensive line, tight ends, and running back get the credit and stuff. But those wide receivers are doing a really good job blocking downfield, and Landry leads that because he challenges those guys.
Speaking of the wide receivers, obviously they had a big game, but how helpful is that going to be going forward? Do you think now putting that on film too, as far as the helping the running game?
Well, it's going to help, and we still feel like there's more guys that can contribute. We really feel that Sebastian's getting healthier. Nobody forgets about Seabass for sure, but what some people fail to realize is that was a December injury. That's usually a 9-month injury. And sometimes longer. And he's starting to gain the strength and starting to gain the confidence that he's going to be a factor for sure this year. Cade Warner's going to continue to grow in our system and be a factor. Tyrone Howell's going to continue to learn our system and be a factor. Jalen Travis, Keenan Garber made a big play. So I like where we're headed as long as we continue to work and continue to understand that when my opportunity comes, and I don't know when that's going to be, I've got to be ready to deliver.
You think that's going to, in turn, help the run game?
You bet. I hope it does, yeah. Spread people out a little bit more.
You have an update on Bronson Massey?
Yeah, he's out for a while. I don't know if that's 2 weeks or if that's 4 weeks. I would say that would be the max it would be. So 2 weeks is an outside shot at Iowa State. 4 weeks, obviously he'd miss a few games. But it's an upper body injury that we feel like he's going to recover from. It's just a matter of, is it going to take 2 to 4 weeks? And can he do enough rehab to get himself potentially ready for Iowa State? He might be able to.
And with the bad tackling on defense, is it possible that the guys on defense are thinking about what happened to Daniel Green and the 2 ejections and that may be leading to bad form?
I don't think so. I really don't. We work so many fundamental and tackling drills, but you guys are smart enough to realize, well, tackling is the biggest lost art in football. I mean, how many of the 6 catches that Landry made, he made 3 or 4 guys miss on every one of his catches. And those are good players that he's making miss. And Malik's making guys miss. And everybody knows Deuce Vaughn makes everybody miss a little bit. It's the lost art in football that typically the team that tackles best in even games is a team that's going to win. And the hard thing is, because of the Daniel Green situations and stuff and concussions, we can't go out there and say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hey, we're going to the ground now. We're tackling these dudes and we're going to the ground. What if a kid has an AC separation, or what if the kid hurts himself doing that? I mean, there's so many things that make it harder to truly tackle to the ground in practice. Now, we tackle donuts and we tackle popsicles and we form up on each other, do everything we can. Some of it is just more trusting your angles and knowing if I'm coming inside out and I got to trust that guy's coming outside in, that he doesn't cut me off. And that's what we did early in the season really well. We have to get back to that.
Season, you had kind of repeatedly mentioned that you thought Tayton could be a weapon for you, but I mean, has he been even better than you thought maybe up to this point?
Yeah, he's been really, really solid and kicking with a lot of confidence, and that's I think he's missed one that he's probably mad at because it was a chip shot for him, but he's able to now when he gets into even a small rut at practice, figure it out on his own. And that's really great for kickers to be able to do, because there's not a bunch of guys that know a ton about kicking on the staff, and those guys use so many outside sources to help them out. But he's kicking with a lot of confidence.
You mentioned the one chip shot, and that is like the shortest one that he kicked is the one that he missed. And I don't think when we talked to you about it the first time, you didn't know at the time whether it was a bad snap or was it actually, did he just maybe
He overswung.
Oh.
Yep.
And then a follow-up that's not actually on that, but did you said you hoped that the Big 12 would at least reach out to you about that onside kick? Did they ever give you a call?
I know they did with Gene. I know that Gene had a conversation. I know Gene's out of town, so it's not going to change. We'll leave it at that.
How much do you need to address the mental side of sport when you deal with a guy like Jacartier who fumbles on his only carry?
Yeah, everybody needs the mental side of sport. That's one of the reasons that we have guys like Ben Newman in our program, and guys need to take advantage of guys like Ben that can help them through some of those things. Jacartier doesn't mean to fumble. It was a technique error as well. Had it in the wrong arm. Things that we're teaching, but you're going to make mistakes, and unfortunately, it was at a really poor time. But we've got to continue to believe in the kid, and we got to have continued support for the kid because he cares. And that's one thing I know about Jacartier. He cares.
I don't know if tentative is the right word, but since he's one more flag away from having to miss an entire game, was Daniel not himself at linebacker on Saturday?
I think it was more Oklahoma. I don't think he thought about it on Saturday, it'd be a question for him maybe in due time. But it's got to weigh on him. There's no question about that. And we try to do some of those drills against things that don't move, and that's the hard thing. It's easy to do drills when that popsicle or that donut's not going to move. But, the hardest thing for all of us, and this is not to say that the calls were wrong at all, is when the target changes. Offensively or defensively, the target changes. It doesn't stay the same, and kids lower their shoulders and lower their helmets, and both sides of the ball do it. And that's the hardest thing I know from an officiating standpoint to be able to decide is, I know one thing. There was no intent on Daniel's part on either time that he got ejected for targeting. All that being said, that's the rule, and with crown of the helmet, we've got to keep his eyes up.
Every year is different. Sometimes teams have more injuries than other teams do. First question is, are there more injuries with this team at this stage of the season than in previous years?
I don't know that for a fact. There's always going to be those injuries that you're like, boy, we're getting hammered at this position. And this year it happens to be defensive end more than any spot. But bigger, faster, stronger doesn't always mean more durable. And that's the thing that when we played, there weren't as many of these injuries back in the 80s and even the 90s. And all of a sudden now, with the advent of so much strength and conditioning and so much speed and explosiveness and the weight training, I think it's been great for guys to be able to get bigger, faster, stronger. I don't know. There's probably something to that from an injury factor, because you see it not at Kansas State. You see it across the landscape of all of football.
You mentioned obviously Bronson and Bebe and Obviously, there's Skyler, who were maybe a few other guys that you're really going to keep an eye on during the week to become healthier.
Reggie Stubblefield. Reggie's a really good football player, and he played a little bit in Stanford and a little bit against Southern Illinois and had kind of a big game against Nevada and got injured and missed the trip to Oklahoma State and was coming back and got a handful of snaps against OU this week will help him. And you guys saw he's got a cast on his hand. That's one thing, but he's got some other ailments that we've got to get him healthy because he allows us to play a true nickel defense that we have to be able to get to.
How much more progress can Skyler make over the next 10 days?
A bunch, just with practice time. You know, that he's missed all the practice time, all the timing with tight ends and receivers and stuff. That's what I'm excited about because I think he played a really, really good game, and I'm so excited for him, but his best football is going to be in front of him still.
I think this is kind of one of these bizarre things this week where, you know, both you and Iowa State happen to have your open date the same week. So with that, do you kind of treat this like you did North Dakota State where you kind of had that time in between the semifinal and championship game?
Never would think about that. Different circumstances probably as well. For us, it's a chance to get a bunch of coaches out on the road for starters. I'm sure they're going to work on us just like we're going to work on them. But I also know that you got to get your bodies healthy because all of us, this next game's an important game, but then there's the next one, and that's the most important one. I mean, there's so much season left that you want to make sure that you position yourself health-wise to be as good as you can for the next 7 weeks.